Hello internet! Today I'm here to do my April wrap up. April was a weird reading month for me. I did not read near as much as I wanted to, and also the 5 books that I read were all audiobooks. I had a really bad reading month in terms of reading physical books because the book that I was reading that I started in March going into April, I got really bored with. So then I picked up another book on my TBR and got really bored with that. And now I'm into the book that I'm reading now, but I didn't finish it in April. So going off of that, one of those books I did end up DNFing, and since I did put forth 2 weeks of my time that month to read it, I wanted to just briefly mention it even though I didn't finish it, and that book was Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken. I am so sad about this book. It's the sequel to Passenger, which I really enjoyed, but this book was so boring. I got about 200 pages into it and it took me like 2 weeks to do that, and at that point I just decided that I honestly did not care about what was happening or the characters or whatever, and I did not want to put forth any more of my time towards this book when I did not care that far in, and I wanted to read something that I would actually enjoy. So I DNF'd it. I think a part of the reason why I couldn't get into it is because I waited too long after reading Passenger, and there were a lot of things that I had forgotten. And they weren't really like re-explained in the beginning of this book. I appreciate when books will kind of just briefly mention like a sentence or something explaining something that happened in the book before. You don't have to go into a full explanation. I know that J.K. Rowling does this in the Harry Potter books. And you know, even if you binge read a book, that kind of thing can be annoying, but if you haven't, it can be really helpful, and she didn't do any of that. Of course, that was her choice as an author, but also just this book was boring to me personally, and I think that there were other things going on with that and other reasons why outside of the fact that I waited too long to read it. I heard that's kind of a fairly common opinion about this book, but I just decided not to finish it. So I wanted to mention it though, since I did take a huge chunk of my time to read it, and this is the main reason why I didn't read any physical books this month. They were all on audio, so oops. Now onto the books that I actually did complete. I also wanted to mention, before I get into the books, that I did participate in a month-long, almost, readathon during the month of April called the O.W.L.s readathon, which was inspired by the O.W.L.s in the Harry Potter series. So I did not get an outstanding. I only completed 3 classes. I completed Care of Magical Creatures, Divination, and Defense Against the Dark Arts. So I will mention what books went towards those as I get to them. The first book actually didn't have anything to do with the readathon because I started listening to it in the month of March, and that was Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This was a reread for me. I read this last year, not long after it came out, but I wanted to reread it before I read the 3rd book, Obsidio, which recently came out and I'm in the middle of right now, just FYI. It's really good. But anyway, I listened to this one on audio. With these books, I like to read the physical book first because it's told in a multimedia format. And then I go back and listen to them on audio when I want to reread them because the audiobooks have a full cast and they are amazing. I did that with Illuminae and I really enjoyed it, so I decided I wanted to do it with Gemina. But this is a YA science fiction trilogy. And it's really good. Normally I don't like books that are told in multimedia formats like that, but these two make this series work so well that way. I thoroughly enjoyed my reread of this, just as much as I did when reading it the first time, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book was my first completed class for the O.W.L.s readathon. It was actually one that I wasn't even planning on reading. I just happened to get the audiobook and immediately wanted to listen to it. And that was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling, which is perfect seeing as how they take their owls in this book, so that could not have been more perfect. But I've slowly been making my way through the Harry Potter series once again, and I had actually forgotten a lot of the details in Order of the Phoenix because it had been so long since I've actually read this book, and I'd forgotten just how much they left out of the movie. This book was so much fun to read since I'd forgotten so much of it. There were parts of it that felt like reading it for the first time, even though, of course, I've read this series several times, but it has been several years since I'd read them chronologically which is what I've been doing when rereading them. But yeah, this book I ended up counting as my Defense Against the Dark Arts book. And as always, whenever I listen to the audiobooks for these, they're amazing. Jim Dale does a wonderful job. So I cannot wait until I am able to get the one for the Half-Blood Prince, and obviously I gave this 5 out of 5 stars because Harry Potter is bae. The next book was my pick for Care of Magical Creatures, and that was The Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. This is the final book to the Heroes of Olympus series, and I really enjoyed this finale. There were a lot of feels I had towards the end. If you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. But I will say there were parts, different points in the book where I felt a little bit disconnected from the plot. Not so much as with the previous book, The House of Hades. And I don't know if that was because I was listening to it on audio or if it was just the book itself. It's kind of hard to tell. But I still really overall enjoyed it. I do wish it had just a little bit more Percy in it, but that's okay. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars anyway. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend this series. If you've read the Percy Jackson series but you haven't started the Heroes of Olympus yet, I definitely recommend that you do. The next book was also not on my TBR for the readathon, but ended up counting towards it for divination, and that book was Wonder Woman or Bringer by Leigh Bardugo. I actually started this book in February, and I just wasn't really getting into it. It started off very slow for me, so I was able to get a hold of the audiobook and I started it over, which is why I went ahead and counted it towards the readathon, because I started the book completely over. And I really enjoyed the audiobook. It was such a fun story, and I thought it was really enjoyable to listen to. I loved all the different kinds of representation that were in here. Leigh Bardugo did a great job of really giving us a diverse cast of characters, which she does anyway. She's always good about that. But like I said, it did start off kind of slow for me, although I've even heard some people say that it started off great and then got slower for them. Everybody's going to be a little different. But this was a very fun read. If you like Wonder Woman, I think you would enjoy this. I don't think I'll ever reread it because I don't really feel the need to, but I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm glad that I finally got around to it. And the last book didn't count towards my readathon. But it is the book, kind of like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. There was a book that I started in March that I started reading the physical book and got bored. That's this book. I ended up picking up the audiobook and finishing it on audio, and I enjoyed it a lot more that way, and it's going to probably shock a lot of people because this is a very loved book, and that is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. This is book 2 in the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater, and I didn't really care for it. I really wanted to like this book. Almost everybody I follow on Goodreads that I have very similar tastes to love this book. But I couldn't get into it. I was so bored. I really enjoyed The Raven Boys, but this one just didn't do it for me, and I don't really know what it is about it that I didn't like. I was just bored. I did enjoy the audiobook more. It helped me just get through it because I wanted to get through it. I did not want to DNF this book. I really wanted to continue on with the series, and I still do. But this book just didn't do it for me. I was very bored. I wasn't connected really to what was happening or the characters in this one. It was just kind of there, and it happened, and now I can move on. I am hoping that I enjoyed the last 2 books enough to where I'll want to enjoy this series overall. But I was kind of disappointed in this one. I only ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, and that's kind of generous. So I'm hoping that I really like the 3rd book more than this one. I was really excited about this one, and it just was, for me, a huge disappointment. That's it for my April wrap up. I'm hoping that May goes a lot better than April did. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on the books that I read, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye.